The first thing I noticed was the music. It wasn't just loud, it was alive. Like the walls of that house were breathing in bass and exhaling smoke and laughter and secrets. I stood at the edge of the lawn like some lost delivery guy, holding a plastic container of homemade soup, because Harley had said she was sick, said her throat was raw, that she needed rest, that she'd be asleep by 9. It was 1:47 a.m. And there was her car, parked 2 blocks away, hidden behind a construction van like she didn't want it to be found. You ever feel your ribs pulse? Like your body knows something before your brain's ready to admit it? I walked up the steps slowly, soup still in hand like an idiot. Someone opened the door, didn't even look at me, just laughed and disappeared into the pulsing crowd inside. The air smelled like vodka and cherry lip gloss and something sour underneath. And there she was, in the kitchen, leaning against a stranger. Wearing the hoodie I thought she'd fallen asleep in. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. My mouth stopped working. I just stood there like some broken statue while she blinked at me like I was the surprise guest in her story. Like I had done something wrong by showing up. She didn't move. Didn't say a word. Just stood frozen, with her hand still resting on the stranger's chest, like she hadn't decided yet whether to pull it away or let it stay. That was the moment I understood something important. You don't always catch betrayal in a text message. Sometimes it's in the pause. The silence between 2 people who used to know what to say. She saw me. I know she did. Our eyes locked across the kitchen for just a moment, barely a second, but it was enough to confirm that she was completely sober. Sober enough to register my face. Sober enough to process what it meant that I was standing there, holding a container of soup like some pathetic, off-brand husband of the year. And still, she didn't flinch. Didn't stumble backward in shame or rush toward me with 1,000 apologies or explanations. Nothing. She just blinked, tilted her head slightly, as if to ask, "What are you doing here?" And that broke me, because you expect betrayal to come with fireworks. A slam of the door, a scream, a fight, a confession. But this was worse. This was calculated. This was someone who had clearly run the math and decided that my hurt was a cost she could afford. I turned around and walked out before I could start crying in front of whoever that guy was. He looked too young, maybe early 20s, wearing one of those ironic shirts that said something dumb like, "Daddy issues make me hot." I wanted to punch him in the mouth, not because he touched her, but because she let him. I didn't go home. I couldn't. I sat in my car for 2 hours, parked under a flickering street lamp in some grocery store lot that smelled like stale soda and cigarette butts. The soup was still in my lap, steam long gone. I never even took the lid off. I kept thinking, maybe she didn't know I'd come. Maybe she really was sick and just went out for a bit. Maybe that guy was gay. Maybe this is all a misunderstanding. But the part of me that still believed in fairy tales was dying fast. When I finally got home around 4 a.m., I placed the soup on the counter and sat at the kitchen table in the dark. I didn't sleep. Didn't even turn on the lights. I just waited. Waited to see if she'd show up before dawn. If she'd come in quietly. If she'd at least look guilty. She didn't come home at all. And that was the real turning point. Not the party. Not the silence. But the absence. The complete erasure of her presence from a space we both built. Our apartment wasn't big, just a 1-bedroom with a creaky floorboard near the bathroom. But suddenly it felt like a canyon. And I was standing at the edge of it, alone, with my voice echoing back to me and no one on the other side. Around noon the next day, I heard the lock turn. And there she was. No heels. No makeup. Just wearing a baggy hoodie and leggings, holding her phone in one hand and a coffee in the other like this was just another Sunday morning. She paused when she saw me still sitting in the same chair, unshaven, unshowered, with that soup container still on the counter, untouched. And for a second, I thought she might cry. I thought she might say, "Lowell, I made a terrible mistake." I thought maybe she'd finally fall apart and admit everything. But instead, she said, "Hey," just that. "Hey," like we were strangers passing in a hallway. And that was when I realized, whatever version of her I had married, she wasn't standing in front of me anymore. She walked past me like she lived alone, put her coffee down on the kitchen counter, stretched her arms overhead with a lazy yawn, and then turned to grab the soup container. The one I'd brought her 12 hours earlier. The one that sat untouched all night while she was draped over a stranger. She peeled off the lid, gave it a sniff, and said, "You made this for me?" I nodded, barely. She smiled, actually smiled, and said, "That's sweet." Thank you. Like I just picked up her dry cleaning. Then she grabbed a spoon from the drawer and sat down across from me. Her posture was relaxed, her face calm. Not defensive, not apologetic. Just neutral. Like this was a Tuesday. Like nothing was broken. I watched her take the first bite. She chewed thoughtfully, nodded to herself, and mumbled, still warm. And I think that's when I started losing it. Not in an explosive, movie scene kind of way, but internally, quietly. Like watching a thread unravel from your favorite sweater and knowing you're never going to be able to fix it. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip the table and ask her who that guy was, what happened between them, why she lied, and what the hell kind of person chooses tequila shots and strangers over a husband who literally makes soup at midnight. But I didn't, because I've never been good at confrontation. I've always believed that people tell you the truth if you give them enough silence. So I gave her silence. She filled it with slurps. Halfway through the bowl, she glanced up and said, "You're being weird." I laughed, more like exhaled through my nose in disbelief. Am I? I asked. My voice cracked on the second word. I hated how pathetic I sounded. She put her spoon down gently, wiped her mouth with a napkin, and leaned back in her chair. Look, she began, like she was about to explain why she forgot to take the trash out. I didn't mean to upset you. I just needed to blow off some steam last night. I've been feeling, I don't know, boxed in. Boxed in, I repeated, barely above a whisper. So you lied and disappeared. I didn't lie, she said immediately. I said I was going to Kira's party. You said you were sick. She blinked once, slowly. That was earlier. I felt better. I stared at her. She didn't flinch again. Not once. What about the guy? I asked. In the kitchen. She raised an eyebrow. What about him? You were touching him. Her response came with terrifying calm. I was drunk. You weren't. She shrugged. Then I was tired. It didn't mean anything. That line, that precise combination of syllables, is what finally shattered something in me. Not just because it was a lie, but because it was a lazy lie. She didn't even respect me enough to make it convincing. She wanted me to take it, swallow it, and move on. And I almost did. But then she said, I think we need some space. And that, read it, that's when I stopped feeling pathetic. That's when something in me, the part that made excuses, that apologized first, that bent backwards until I snapped, finally sat up and said, enough. I didn't say anything right away. I just sat there, watching the steam rise off the soup she no longer cared about, and thought about all the ways I had let things slide. I thought about the times she came home late, and I didn't ask questions. The nights she locked her phone screen when I walked by. The sudden work trips that were always last minute, always just a little too vague. I thought about all of it, and I realized something terrifying. She hadn't changed overnight. I had just been closing my eyes for a really long time. When she said, I think we need some space, she expected silence. She expected me to nod slowly, swallow it down, and maybe cry quietly in the shower later. She expected me to retreat to the couch like a loyal dog and wait to be let back into her life. Because that's who I had been. A background character in my own marriage. The guy who played support while she ran the show. But something about her saying it so casually, as if she were asking for more time on the treadmill, lit a fuse I didn't even know I had. I stood up. Not aggressively. Not dramatically. Just intentionally. She blinked at me, surprised. Where are you going? Packing a bag, I said. To go where? I looked at her for a long time before answering. I don't know yet. But not here. And for the first time in this entire nightmare, she looked uncomfortable. Her legs shifted. Her fingers tapped the side of the bowl. You don't have to be dramatic, Lowell. I laughed. And it wasn't bitter, it was clear. Real. Solid. You disappeared overnight and came home holding a latte like it was Sunday brunch. You told me you needed space while I was still cleaning up the dinner I made you. If anyone's being dramatic here, it's you. She didn't reply right away. I could tell she was trying to calculate her next move. That's the thing about Harley. She's not chaotic, she's strategic. Everything she does is a move in some unspoken chess game. And I've been the idiot king standing still while she danced around me with queens and bishops and knights. But not today. You're not thinking clearly, she said. Let's just cool off and talk later. There's nothing left to cool off, I replied. You already checked out. I'm just following your lead. She stood up too now, suddenly serious. Look, if you're trying to guilt trip me into begging you to stay. I'm not, I interrupted. I'm trying to leave before I hate you. That hit something. Her mouth twitched. Her shoulders dropped, just slightly. I could see the storm behind her eyes starting to form, but she still tried to keep her tone steady. So what? You're just walking out. After all we've built? I grabbed my keys. You walked out first. I'm just catching up. I didn't pack much. Just a duffel with enough clothes for a week, my laptop, and the copy of Norwegian which she gave me during our second year of marriage. Ironically, a story about loneliness and emotional distance. I didn't even know why I took it. Maybe to remind myself that pain could be beautiful. Maybe because I needed something that once meant something. When I walked out the door, she didn't stop me. Didn't cry. Didn't beg. She just stood there in that hoodie, staring at the floor like the script she wrote for this moment had gone missing. And for the first time in a very, very long time, I felt something that wasn't sadness. I felt free. But freedom, as I'd soon find out, doesn't mean peace. It means you finally have space to see what was really going on, and what I'd find next would ruin everything I thought I knew about my marriage. I spent the first night at a budget motel 30 minutes from our apartment. The room smelled like bleach and old carpet, and the walls were thin enough to hear someone on the other side arguing about chicken nuggets. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't comfortable, but it was quiet. And quiet is all I wanted. Until it wasn't. At around 3 a.m., I did what every emotionally gutted man knows he shouldn't do. I opened her social media. She hadn't posted anything. That wasn't surprising. Harley wasn't a poster. She curated. If it wasn't a vacation, a group photo, or a filtered latte in soft lighting, it didn't go online. But I noticed something strange. Her following list had changed. She was following someone named Seb. No last name. Just Seb. No profile picture. No bio. Just an account with 3 posts, all of them locked to followers. I tapped through her recent likes, her tagged photos. Nothing. But then I opened the story highlights on her coworker Kira's page, the one she was supposedly with that night. Buried in a sea of party videos, half-lit selfies, and shots of glitter-covered heels, I saw something. It was a boomerang. Harley, sitting on a stranger's lap. Same hoodie. Same kitchen. Laughing. Only it wasn't just laughter. Her hand was on his face. His arm was around her waist. And the worst part? The date stamp. It wasn't from last night. Or the week before. It was from 2 months ago. I watched the video again. Then again, counting how long her smile lingered. Not the fake smile she used with her boss or my relatives, the real one. The one I used to see when she'd fall back on the bed giggling, tipsy off 1 glass of wine. That smile. It was his now. I messaged Kira. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe a lie, maybe a defensive wall, maybe silence. But what I got was a shrug in text form. I thought you knew. They've been off and on for weeks. Didn't mean to get in the middle. I stared at that sentence until it blurred. Off and on. Weeks. That wasn't a party. That wasn't a single mistake. That was a hidden second life. A whole relationship behind my back, stitched together with girls' nights, late meetings, and the worst part, my trust. I didn't reply. I couldn't. I just turned my phone off and sat on the edge of that motel bed, clutching the stupid copy of Norwegian would like it could translate all the pain crashing through me. For a while I did nothing. No tears. No rage. Just pure, unfiltered humiliation. I thought about all the nights I massaged her shoulders when she said work was wearing her down. All the dinners I cooked. All the times I picked up her dry cleaning, filled her gas tank, kissed her forehead while she typed away on her laptop, maybe even texting him. I felt like a ghost in my own life. But then something snapped. Not like before. This wasn't some emotional collapse. This was sharp, cold, focused. I realized I didn't want closure. I wanted answers. Real ones. Not the filtered, emotionally convenient versions she'd rehearsed. I wanted to know who Seb was, how they met, and why she kept coming home to me with his breath still probably on her. So the next morning, I went back to the apartment. Not to fight. Not to forgive. To dig. And what I found when I opened her laptop changed everything. I let myself into the apartment just after 11 a.m. I knew she'd be gone. Sunday mornings were for yoga and overpriced smoothies with coworkers who didn't know I existed. The place was spotless, as always. Harley kept things unnaturally tidy, as if messiness might accidentally reveal something she didn't want seen. I didn't touch anything right away. I just stood in the doorway, staring at our furniture like it belonged to someone else. The couch where we used to binge-watch crime documentaries, the rug we picked together on that spontaneous trip to Portland, the bookshelf she color-coded like a psychopath. All of it felt hollow now, like a stage. A perfectly constructed lie built for two. Only one of us hadn't been reading the same script. Her laptop was on the kitchen island, plugged in, lid halfway open. I sat down and stared at it for a long time. I knew her password. She didn't know I did, but I did. She used her childhood dog's name and her college graduation year. She used it for everything. Harley was clever in some ways, but careless in the ones that mattered. I typed it in, and there it was. Her world. Her browser tabs. Her files. Her emails. The first thing I noticed was that she had a folder on her desktop labeled T. Just a single letter. Inside were dozens of screenshots. Some were memes. Some were photos of sunsets. But most were selfies, sent to someone else. None of them had ever been taken in our apartment. They were from bathrooms I'd never seen, cars I didn't recognize, hotel rooms that didn't belong to any of our vacations. I opened her messaging app. She had recently cleared the conversations. I could tell they weren't uninstalled, just wiped. But she'd forgotten one thing, the email sync. Harley had connected her personal email to her desktop messaging client, likely so she could send attachments more easily. And because of that, dozens of notifications had backed up in her inbox. Deleted threads, forgotten invites, even password reset requests from accounts I'd never seen. And right there, near the top of her inbox, was a confirmation email from a private messaging app I'd never heard of before. No sender name, just a subject line. Welcome back to Thrive. Thrive. I didn't know what it was, but I clicked, and what I saw made the floor tilt. It was an encrypted platform, marketed as a safe space for discreet conversations. Couples cheating, executives plotting affairs, people living double lives. The kind of place where the truth wasn't welcome unless it was wrapped in code and denial. She had an account, and she had been using it for over 9 months. I clicked through her usage history. Most of it was hidden, but one backup email thread contained a few automatic alerts from the platform. Dates, login times, IP addresses. Most matched ours, our apartment, our Wi-Fi. But one didn't. One location pinged from Santa Rosa. I froze. Harley didn't have family in Santa Rosa. No friends, no clients, no history. We'd never even talked about it. But she'd logged into Thrive from a Santa Rosa hotel 3 weeks ago. During the same weekend, she told me she was visiting her aunt in Phoenix. I even dropped her off at the airport myself. I felt sick. And yet, a strange calm washed over me. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't overthinking. All those nights of second-guessing myself, of wondering if maybe I was just insecure, if maybe I needed to loosen up, like she used to say, they were all lies she needed me to believe. Because a suspicious man digs, but a self-blaming man folds. And I had folded for far too long. I took screenshots, dozens of them, backed them up to a flash drive I kept on my keychain. I didn't know what I was going to do with them yet, but I knew this wasn't just cheating. This was methodical. It was deliberate. A part of her life she had constructed piece by piece, out of reach from mine. And then I opened one last tab. A calendar invite. It was auto-generated and buried under some event spam. But the title caught my eye. Anniversary. SR Hotel. Reservation confirmed. The date? Our anniversary weekend. While I was planning a quiet dinner and wrapping a book she once said she loved, she was making hotel reservations in another city under a fake email address. And just like that, every good memory we ever had lit itself on fire in my brain. I closed the laptop. My hands were trembling. And that was when I heard the front door unlock. The door clicked open with its usual hollow echo, followed by the soft thud of her gym bag hitting the entryway floor. She hummed something under her breath, a song she probably heard in the car, then paused, just briefly, like she sensed something was different. I was sitting on the couch in complete silence, back straight, hands resting on my knees, staring directly at the hallway. She stepped into view a second later, a paper smoothie cup in one hand and her keys in the other. Her ponytail was damp with sweat, her leggings streaked with dust from the yoga studio floor. She looked normal, ordinary, beautiful even. And for the first time in our marriage, I didn't feel like I knew her at all. She spotted me and stopped. Her eyebrows lifted just a fraction. "You're back?" she asked. Not cold, not warm, just casual, like I'd stepped out to check the mail. I nodded. She took a sip of her drink. "I thought you said you needed space." I kept my voice steady. I did. And I used it. Her head tilted. Okay. Then her eyes scanned the room. I knew exactly what she was checking for, whether anything had been moved, touched, opened. But I had left everything exactly as she had, except for one thing, her laptop. I'd closed it, gently, but I hadn't returned it to its charger. It sat a few inches off from where she'd left it. Subtle, but not to her. She didn't mention it. She didn't have to. Her eyes flicked toward it for only a second, but I caught the micro-freeze in her posture. Her shoulders went a little stiffer, her jaw a little tighter. The mask cracked, just slightly, but enough for me to know she knew. I stood up, slowly. How was yoga? Fine, she said. A little crowded. You see Kira there? That made her pause again. She smiled faintly. Why? I was just wondering. You two seem close. She didn't take the bait. We work together. We vent. That's all. I walked toward the kitchen, speaking over my shoulder. Funny. She seems to know a lot more than just office drama. Silence. I opened the fridge, took out a bottle of water, kept my back to her as I said. She told me about the kitchen party, the one 2 months ago. More silence. Then, what else did she say? The way she asked it told me everything. She didn't deny the party. She didn't even pretend to be confused. She just wanted to know how much I knew. That's the moment I realized I had more power than I thought. I turned back around and took a slow sip. Enough. But I didn't come back here to talk about Kira. She crossed her arms. Then why did you come back? To see what was real. She scoffed. What does that even mean? It means I spent 6 years building a life with you, I said, voice rising just enough to cut through the air like a blade. And now I'm trying to figure out if any of it actually happened, or if I was just renting space in someone else's story. She opened her mouth, probably to deflect, redirect, minimize, but I cut her off. I saw the email, Harley. The color drained from her face instantly. She didn't ask which email. She didn't say, what are you talking about? Her breath caught in her throat like it had tried to flee before she could speak. The silence between us ballooned into something thick and suffocating. You shouldn't be going through my stuff, she said, but the words were brittle now. And you shouldn't be reserving hotel rooms behind my back using encrypted messaging apps meant for people who pretend they're single. Her mouth opened again, this time to protest, but she froze when I pulled the flash drive from my pocket and set it on the table between us. I backed everything up. You can wipe the laptop. You can ghost Kira. You can lie to my face for another week if you want. But this, I tapped the flash drive gently, this doesn't go away. Her eyes dropped to the table. Then she did something I wasn't prepared for. She laughed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't maniacal. It was soft, almost sad. And then she said, you always needed proof. That's what killed us. You never just believed in me. I stared at her in stunned silence. That was her defense? That I was the problem because I eventually dared to confirm what my gut had been screaming for months? I stepped closer, lowered my voice. I did believe in you. So much so that I ignored every single red flag until the ground under me was bleeding. You didn't kill us with what you did last weekend, Harley. You killed us a long time ago, one deleted message, one quiet lie at a time. Her face twitched again. She looked like she wanted to scream or cry, or maybe both. But she didn't, because for once, she didn't have control of the narrative. I picked up my keys. I'm not here to fight. I'm not here to beg. I'm here to leave on my own terms. She took a small step forward. And then what? I don't know, I said. Maybe I rebuild. Maybe I crash. But at least next time, it'll be real. And I walked out. Again. Only this time, she didn't follow me to the door. She stood there, still as a statue, as the truth finally sat down beside her. Uninvited, heavy, and impossible to ignore. For the first few days, I kept expecting some kind of collapse. I thought I'd break down in a grocery store aisle, or cry in the middle of traffic, or wake up at 2 a.m. and forget where I was. But the breakdown never came. Instead, something strange happened. I started to feel calm. Not happy, not free, just calm. Like the noise had finally stopped. I got a short-term rental in a quiet neighborhood a few miles outside the city. Nothing fancy, just a second-floor unit with old wood floors and a window that creaked when the wind blew. But it was mine. No ghosts in the corners. No forgotten texts hiding in the walls. The first night there, I made dinner for one. Just pasta with butter and garlic, nothing special. But it felt like a ritual. Like I was proving something to myself. You can start over. You don't need her permission to exist. She texted, of course. At first it was short things like, "Are you okay? And we should talk." Then came longer messages, paragraphs filled with half apologies and rewrites of history. She never really admitted anything, just floated around the truth like a kid dipping their toe in a pool they didn't want to swim in. I didn't reply, not because I wanted to punish her, but because there was nothing left to say. I started walking more, reading more. I signed up for a free class at the community center on digital photography, something I'd always said I'd try when I had time. Turns out I had time. I even bought a cheap used camera from a guy on Craigslist who threw in a tripod, just because. And then one day, while taking photos of some rusted-out train tracks near the river, I met someone. Her name was Margot. She wasn't flashy. She wasn't loud. She didn't make dramatic entrances or wear shoes that clicked when she walked. She just sat down beside me on the bench with a thermos of tea and asked if I'd seen the hawks circling overhead. We talked about birds for almost an hour, and it was the first time in months that I forgot to think about Harley. Margot didn't fix me. That's not her job, and I'm not rushing into anything. But there's something beautiful about being seen without needing to be impressive. She asked me once, halfway through a conversation about light exposure and shutter speed, what I used to do before photography. And I said, I used to love someone who didn't love me back the same way. She nodded, didn't pity me, didn't say her loss, just nodded. And somehow that was enough. Now, I don't check Harley's socials anymore. I don't open her messages. I don't dig for closure in a place that never gave me honesty in the first place. Some people will spend their whole lives spinning webs and calling it connection. But not me. Not anymore. I cook. I walk. I take pictures of things people don't notice. And I've started smiling at the quiet instead of fearing it. Because in the end, it wasn't her betrayal that defined me. It was the moment I walked away from it.